Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Welcome to the initial episode, the first episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast. My name is Josh Sweeney, and in this initial episode, what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about myself, about my love for company culture, how it came about, give you a little bit of background, and just really tell you why some of these things matter and why you should be listening to me and the podcast. Before I get started, I would like to do a shout out to Prototype Prime. We're in their beautiful podcast recording booth here in Peachtree Corners, Georgia. And if you haven't checked out Prototype Prime and their co-working space, I definitely suggest that you come take a look. And if you need to get your podcast recording completed, then they got a great space for that. So thank you, Prototype Prime. So a little bit about myself. My background starts mostly in technology. Started my first company was a telecommunications company, did fiber optic, low voltage cabling, lots of contracts doing, all kinds of work in what would be the construction space, mostly commercial construction and, running those cables, being on ladders all day. And that was my first taste of managing my own company culture. Very different from where I am today in that was on job sites, ladders, much more of a blue collar environment and just a totally different vibe across the board. And we'll talk some more about that throughout the podcast series. Shortly after that, I knew I did not want to be on a ladder anymore. And I had a strong love for information security, had been in the information security realm since high school, doing all those fun discovery items as a high school student that I was not supposed to be doing. And all your typical hacking things. So I went to work in the information security arena, and that started me off at Internet Security Systems. So Internet Security Systems was about a 1,000-person company. And in that company, they had a very distinct company culture as well. I was actually down on the bottom floor. I wouldn't even say it was the bottom floor. It was the sub-basement of the sub-basement. I had to go through multiple different security checks to get down to the security operations center. And, we were managing security devices. And so I got a taste for a culture of a company around 1,000 people in a corporate environment. And, I got a lot of stories that had been shared with me throughout about the heyday of Internet Security Systems growing and all the fun that they used to have, but didn't, some of it they still had and some of it they didn't have anymore. So from there, I progressed over to Spy Dynamics, which was, in between the small business I had and the 1,000 people at Internet Security Systems. I believe Spy Dynamics was around 100 people. And that's where I got the first insight and look into the type of company, not only that I would want to work for, but also the type of company I would build and the company culture that I would want to be a part of pretty much for the rest of my life. So Spy Dynamics had a very unique culture in that it was just an amazing place to work. And I'm not going to give it all away now because I got other podcasts coming out that are going to tell you all about my experience at Spy Dynamics and why it was amazing. Worked for a couple other large organizations. So Spy Dynamics got bought out. After the buyout, I did some time, and I do call it doing time at HP. Sorry, HP. But the company culture was fundamentally different at a Fortune 500 than obviously a funded startup that Spy Dynamics was. And that's understandable, but for me particularly, not as enjoyable. Did some other work at T-Mobile in the meantime, and then moved on into sales engineering in the CRM space. So I went to work for Sugar CRM, where I was then a remote employee. So we had a small concentration of people in Atlanta, but the majority of the organization was in Cupertino. And so again, I'm evolving, I'm learning, and I'm experiencing many different company cultures, not intentionally, just by happenstance of progressing through a career. So I got to understand, what was it like to be a remote worker? What was it like like not to be around all of your peers all day, but around them virtually, right? On the phone with them, on Zoom meetings and GoToMeeting and whatever, webinar technology we were using at the time. So that was a totally different experience, and I look forward to sharing some more about that and managing remote cultures in future podcasts. The next step that I made from there was from Sugar CRM, I went on to start At-Course Systems, which was my CRM consulting firm. And I had all of these ambitions from everything that I've learned from a company culture, and I wanted to really build it into At-Course Systems. And what really happened was I figured out it's hard. Building a company culture is fundamentally difficult on every level. And I don't think that I ever really built the company culture at At-Course Systems that I truly wanted. We made great strides. We worked at amazing locations. We had some good events, but at the end of the day, it wasn't that experience I had at Spy Dynamics. And that leads me up to where I am now around working with companies to help them build an amazing company culture. What sort of items, tactics, strategies do you need to put in place to really have the outcome that you want for hiring, retention, and overall enjoyment of the role? So that's why I started this podcast as well, along with Epic Culture, the company, is to help people get there. And through this podcast, we're going to be sharing all kinds of knowledge through interviews, through stories, and overall education just to help you get there. And we look forward to helping you in the future.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.